Welcome to the Black Sparrow Media Internet Broadcast Network.
You are listening to Linux in the Ham Shack. LHS is a podcast about Linux, open source, and amateur radio for everyone. Now here are your hosts, Russ, K5TUX, Cheryl, W5MOO, and Bill, NE4RD.
Well, hello and welcome everyone. You have tuned in to episode number 531 of Linux in the Ham Shack, the most terrific amateur radio podcast on the internet. And you have caught us on our deep dive episode, so we thank you for being here. We really appreciate you tuning in and listening. And before we get to our topic for this evening, we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves. I'm Russ, K5TUX. Cheryl, W5MOO, is not here, but we do have
Bill, NE4RD. Good evening.
All right. So two of us are here. And
yay!
Cheryl doesn't really like doing the deep dives anyway because, she basically doesn't really have that much to do other than tell you all about our new subscribers and stuff. But, okay, I might have to pause here while the dogs are... don't think you can hear them, but they are definitely running roughshod over my nerves right now. All right, let's see if they settle down. Okay, I think they settled down. So anyway, we were digging around for a topic tonight, and in between all the other stuff going on, I didn't really come up with one. Bill threw one out, and I was like, oh, well, that sounds like something that might be interesting to talk about, and I actually started exploring it. Because he thinks I'm some sort of a Luddite or something. What's the deal? Why are you annoyed that I don't use our topic for tonight, which, by the way, is Tailscale?
Why am I annoyed? Well, because it's so easy.
Well, it is easy, but don't you have to have a use case for things? I mean, do you just use stuff to use things?
I originally got into Tailscale because, well, I heard it was the bee's knees, and I was the same way. I was like, I don't really have a use case for this. I'm pretty much either at home or at my office, and I have all my devices. I know how to connect to them all. I used to have the OpenVPN server here at the house, and as soon as I started connecting the first few devices on Tailscale, I was like, oh, this is why. Let's just briefly go over some of the verbiage I threw in the show notes just about Tailscale. For those of you that have never heard of it, which hopefully that isn't many, but I'm sure there are some that have not heard of it. I had our good friend Bard do the notes for this, so I'm sure this will sound AI-ish to some scale. I didn't feel like cutting and pasting off the website, so I was uber lazy just popping this in here. But anyway, this is what Google Bard thought about the good old Tailscale. It says, secure and private VPN service. So I asked it, what is Tailscale? Secure and private VPN service. This is the core function. Tailscale creates a private network called the Tailnet between your devices. That's laptops, phones, servers, etc., anything you want to plug into it, that encrypts all communication, keeping your data secure even while you're on public Wi-Fi. This public Wi-Fi always gets such a bad rap. Jeez. It's a peer-to-peer
reason, because I think that's like why there is a dark web.
Yes, for sure. It's a peer-to-peer mesh network. Unlike traditional VPNs that route traffic through central servers, Tailscale devices connect directly to each other, often resulting in faster and more reliable connections. It's like building your own private internet for your devices. It's easy to use and configure. Setting up Tailscale is famously simple, requiring just a quick installation and authentication on each device. No complex configuration or port forwarding needed, even behind firewalls. This is important. It's an identity-based access. Users are identified by their Tailscale username, eliminating the need for IP addresses or manually configuring firewall rules. Sharing access is as simple as inviting someone by their username. So that's right. You can invite other users to be part of your Tailscale network. There's additional features, including Tailscale offers various useful features like split tunneling, DNS servers via a thing they call Magic DNS, and access control policies, making it a versatile tool for both personal and professional use. And speaking of that, bark, bark. You can Tailscale is free for up to 3 users on your own account, and I believe 100 devices. So you don't even have to begin paying for the service until you've exceeded more than 100 devices. So just put that in perspective to how many things you have connected. Here's some key benefits to using Tailscale. Security. Its strong encryption protects your data and ensures privacy. Speed and reliability. Direct connections avoid the bottlenecks of central servers, leading to faster and more stable connections. Ease of use. It's simple to set up and management, even for non-technical users. So yeah, even Russ can do it, right? Flexibility. It works on various devices and operating systems and seamlessly integrates with existing networks. I have it installed on my Google phone, and you can install it on your iOS devices. Flexibility. It works on various devices. Did I say that already? Yeah, I did. Control. Granular access control and management features for administrators. Overall, Tailscale is a user-friendly VPN solution that simplifies secure networking across all your devices. Its unique mesh architecture and intuitive design makes it a popular choice for individuals, businesses, and remote teams. So I will give one example where I've used Tailscale and it worked brilliantly. We used it at Hamvention the last time for me to remote into my system at home. I connected directly to the system via Tailscale and used No Machine to connect to my machine. So that means I don't have to use things like TeamViewer or something like that, or connect to my local network at home first and then remote desktop to the machine. I automatically can see all the machines that are in my Tailscale network, no matter where I am or what network I'm connected to. So this simplifies you finding your machines, including like on a GUI interface. So let's say the Mac, it puts it up in the top bar, has like a little funky T icon. And in Windows, it'll put it down the taskbar. You'll see a little icon there. But you'll see that you're connected as soon as you do the install. And if we talk, I guess we should talk about the install first, right? Yeah.
Well, actually, before you start talking about the install, let me talk about the licensing, because it's kind of interesting.
Okay.
The whole project, at least the core part of the project that actually does all the data transfer and the encryption and all of that kind of stuff, that is all open source, fully open source, downloadable, buildable, whatever you want to do. And the management part of it for any operating system that is open source is also open source. But the management GUI for any operating system that is not open source, i.e. Mac OS or Windows, is not open source. I'm not sure why they made that distinction in particular. But if you yourself are completely open source and your network is open source, then so is Tailscale. So I thought that was really good. I like there. And they have a long sort of treatise about why they're open scale and what it brings to the project and all that. So if you want to read about that, just check out the project. But it's pretty cool. And another thing to recommend it, being that it's all open source software.
Yeah, absolutely. So the devices that you can install this software on is, of course, Linux, Mac OS, Windows. You can also do Windows WSL2, which is interesting. You can install it on a Chromebook. You can install it on an Apple TV, an iOS device, and an Android device. So these are all the devices that you can actually install it into. The installation is pretty straightforward. On Linux systems, they give you a simple curl line that just basically grabs the installer shell script, which you can download and look at first because, you should. I never trust scripts, right? But it will take care of picking the right package for your environment, whether that be Ubuntu, Debian, CentOS, pretty much anything, Arch, NixOS, whatever your favorite distribution is, it will definitely install. I personally haven't run across one that it hasn't, including some older versions of Ubuntu on some servers and stuff like that. So it's super easy to install. Picking how you're going to authenticate with it, of course, I would definitely have it, if you're going to use like GitHub, make sure your GitHub account is two-factor authentication. Pretty much any kind of SSO type situation that you're going to use for it, make sure that it is protected behind two-factor authentication minimally. Maybe even more than just that, because once you start installing this on all of your machines, imagine that someone can get into your Tailscale network and see all of your machines just like you can. And there is some additional features as you build out your Tailscale network that that allow you to do some more interesting things, including being able to communicate with devices that do not have Tailscale installed. I use this feature as well. So it's a kind of a neat thing. So I guess we could talk a little bit about the management console, which I'm going to bring up because I rarely look at it. What do they call it? The Tailscale. Yeah, let me just log into Tailscale. How about that? Log in.
I'm installing Tailscale on one of my Linux machines right now as we talk about this, because I'm very new to this Tailscale thing. I installed it on my studio Mac PC just before we started to air here, and now I'm installing it on one of my machines that's running Nextcloud. That was one of the use cases that was in the YouTube video they put out. So you can have private access to your Nextcloud instead of exposing it to the public. I actually want to expose my Nextcloud to the public, but I chose that machine just because. And I'm going to see if it's actually joined my little domain here while you're bringing up the GUI.
The GUI, yeah. So I'm on the Tailscale admin console, and in here you're presented. It's a web page, so you can get to it via web. You're presented with your machines that are connected, and they'll show their status, their version status, what operating system they are, and whether they're running the latest version or if they need an update, which I see some of mine need updates. For each machine, you'll see how it's set up, whether it's set up for expiring. So when you join a computer to the network, they get basically a key, and that key will expire, between points in time and when it authenticates. So when you go back and authenticate with the machine. Now, if you're going to have a machine like a server that's always connected, you can disable the key expiry on those machines. And I recommend that because I have forgotten to do that on mine a couple of times, and I couldn't get to certain machines, and it was a little bit annoying. And I was like, oh, crap, I forgot about doing that, because you kind of have to do it from the machine itself at that point. So you can do that through that console in the machine. They give you a little drop-down area where you can either share the machine. You can do things like edit the machine name, the IP address. You can share the machine. You can enable or disable the key expiry. You can actually view the recent activity for that machine. And as well, you can edit the routing settings and the ACL tags for that machine. So if you wanted to control what gets what access to what device and stuff like that, that's where you'll be able to manage your ACLs for each machine. Now, a couple of things you can do too, which I have set up here, and that is doing subnet routing. And this is what I was talking about when you're trying to connect devices that can't install Tailscale on, whether that be like, I don't know, pick a device. Let's say a corporate laptop or something like that. So you have a corporate laptop, you can't install this kind of software on it, but you still want to be able to get to it. You can RDP to it when you're on your local network, but when you're away from wherever your machine is actually plugged in and connected, you can't RDP to it because you can't connect to that local network. However, if you happen to have a Tailscale device on that network, you can now route that subnet that device sits on back through your Tailscale. So then all of those IP addresses are now available to your network. This is where a little network management has to take place, especially if you have the same subnets underneath the various locations that you have plugged in. Because we know a lot of the home routers and stuff like that will all put you in the 192.168.1 or .0 networks. So you might want to be creative if you start getting into doing this type of functionality. But what it does is once you enable the subnets on the particular device, and then you allow consuming those subnets in the network, you can then talk to every device that device can see in the network, which is invaluable. You can also use that device or whatever device as an exit node on the device, meaning you can connect to your Tailscale network and use that device as your internet access device. So that means you can VPN all your traffic directly through that, no matter what you're doing. So like, let's say for my instance where I have an exit node, I have one in my office and one here at the house. So on my phone, when I'm out and about and traveling, I can select and go onto my Tailscale network and then switch which exit node I want to use. In my office, strangely enough, it shows me in Washington State, because it's a crappy T-Mobile home connection or something like that. And at home, of course, it shows me in Montana and Charter, or whatever we have, Spectrum, which I think is the same thing. So you can basically get your sort of VPN from home, no matter where you are. Like I could be in Europe and my traffic is still showing me from my house. So that's kind of neat. And, you can do that with OpenVPN as well. But this works quite seamlessly, and you can flip around. Now, they have recently added the ability to pile on a VPN service, which is multi-vlad. I'm trying to remember now. They just added it, where you can actually have a regular VPN service. Let's see, I'll just go to Tailscale's website and check it out. Blah, 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 blah. Where is the VPN? Blah, blah, blah. Sorry. You can speak. Look this up.
But I was busy connecting my networks together and altering DNS settings and stuff like that, and checking and doing some connecting and pinging across my computer here to the Nextcloud server, and checking to see if I could do it like outside the Tailscale or my Tailnet and inside the Tailnet, and it absolutely works flawlessly. So
cool.
Yeah, so I can definitely see some use cases for this. I love the thing in the video where it was like, you mentioned that they were supporting Apple TV, and you just mentioned the exit node functionality, and they're like, maybe for Christmas, like gift your friends an Apple TV and set it up so that you can use their connection as your exit node and stuff like that. So, I thought that was hilarious. Yeah, because this is not like NordVPN or some of the other VPN services like Surfshark and all that stuff, where you can pick an exit node like in a foreign country and stuff like that. This is, your tailnets have to have access to, or have been granted access to an exit node, which means that it has to be somebody who's allowed you to use their node as an exit node, or it's a node that you control. So this, you can do it for like being surreptitious in certain ways, like if you want to have a connection to your bank account be from your local network instead of from your phone, wherever you happen to be, you can certainly use Tailscale for that. So definitely has some neat utility for sure. And I'm finding out a lot of this sort of like on the fly. So did you get to where you were trying to get to?
No, of course I couldn't find what I was looking for. I just saw an ad, a thing for it, and I'm trying to find it on the website. And of course, I'm failing to do that. But anyway, they have like one of those like NordVPN kind of services, whatever, that you can tack onto your Tailscale network that's available to your Tailscale network, and then you can set those VPN points, so you can set up certain ones that you want to use or like to use as exit nodes within your network as well, and you can force your machines on your Tailscale network to also always use those if you always wanted them to use those. So that's kind of neat. And I think they have like a free tier 2 for that. But I think their like paid tier for it was like, I don't know, like $6 a month or something like that. Something silly. But anyway, that's one of the many things. Oh, Mulvad. That's Mulvad. Sorry. MULLVAD VPN. That's what it is. And it's $5 a month. How about that? So yeah, you can, you can set it up so every device on your network can go out via these many different exit nodes via Tailscale as well, if you wanted to do that. So like if you're currently paying for some kind of VPN service, this is something that you could tie into your devices, and I believe per month for 5 devices. So up to 5 devices can use the VPN. I'm assuming at the same time, so concurrently. So if you wanted to do that, by all means, you do not have to do that to get this thing to work in any functional way. It is very, very usable within that context of being able to route a subnet that your device can see wherever it's plugged into, and also use it as an exit node with the device if it happens to have, or within the network if it happens to have internet access. So some of the other tabs that you can see on the admin console, you do have an apps thing, which is route traffic to third-party SaaS apps through your connection. Something like that. I have no idea. I've never used it. But you can do a direct app connection via your Tailscale network. I'm assuming that's if you wanted to add something very specific that everything can see and do it by name or whatever. There's services you can add. You can add users. So this is where you'll add additional users that have access to your Tailscale network. You have the access controls, which gives you the ability to edit the access controls for your network, including setting up your accept deny lists and stuff like that. So pretty straightforward access control lists. Logs, you can see logging of your traffic well, not traffic, but logging of like access to your network. So I can see that I just logged into the admin console here just a few minutes ago. DNS names, you can actually give it a unique DNS name for your network. If you wanted to do that, they have a network.ts.net that you can get to it via that. They also have name servers. They have Magic DNS. Magic DNS is kind of cool because you can actually connect to all your machines via name instead of by IP. It's something I haven't used yet, but it's so easy to connect to machines on the network because you can see their IP address via the admin console, or if you're using a device, let's say like your phone or whatever, they have the list of all the devices. So you just basically click the device and you can copy it, whatever. There's, let's see, settings. Settings just get you into how you manage stuff, including some of the cool little features. Like there's a send files feature. Think of this like AirDrop for your network. So you can actually send files to all your connected devices pretty much at will, and that is really easy and simple. I use this while we were at the National Jamboree, just copying logs between the computers because all those computers were on my Tailscale network. So I could basically just push the logs back and forth pretty easy without having to SFTP or FileZilla or something like that to the machine. I could send them all to one machine and then just import all the logs into one machine and re-merge them together, because we know N1MM does such a bang-up job in managing the log merging on its own. A bunch of other features that they have at various states, including, and they tell you what state they're in. So they have like a service collection setting. It's an alpha. It's an alpha status. So these are feature preview things. They have a Tailscale SSH. This allows you to SSH into servers by just using your Tailscale and your Tailnet policy for authorization and authentication. So that's kind of interesting. Funnel, which allows users on your network to route traffic from the wider internet to their Tailscale nodes. And then Tailnet Lock, which verifies node keys distributed by the coordination server before trusting them. And then, of course, you can just delete your Tailnet if you really want to. User management basically shows you how you have your identity management set up, who your identity provider is and whatnot, and whether you need to require new users to be approved by you before they can access your network. I'm assuming if you allow people to just randomly connect to your Tailscale network, not for me though. Let's see, device management, how devices are approved, key expiry. You can actually change the number of days that the keys are working. Right now, I think the default is 180 days before they'll expire if you haven't already disabled key expiry. They also have device posture integrations, which enables integrations for third-party device attributes, stuff like using CrowdStrike Falcon and stuff like that. OAuth clients, should you actually use those, has that ability to set those up so you can generate an OAuth client for your network for people to access it. Webhooks, contact preferences, of course, that's just for you. Billing, if you happen to be on a plan that is over 100 devices or is a paid plan. And in fact, it'll keep track of how many devices you have connected if you can't count that high. So mine says I have 19 devices, and a lot of them are the K2BSA devices that have already expired because they haven't been on since August. So actually, they're not expired, are they? No. Yeah, they expired. Oh no, they expired in December. So all those are disconnected. But yeah, it's a really informational and quite flexible admin console that they have built here on your network. Again, each device has the ability to have some extra settings and stuff like that, depending upon your device, including, if you go in, like I'm looking at a Windows machine right now and looking at the little adapter, it has preferences, and this is where it has, do you want to allow incoming connections, use Tailscale DNS settings, use Tailscale subnets, and then whether you want it to be automatically installing updates, which I highly suggest because it does update quite often. So get your updates and stay secure, because you don't want to have some kind of zero-day exploit available inside of your network. That would be bad. So best to keep those automatically updating. And let's see, I think that's it for the kind of the glossy 10,000-foot view of everything. How'd that second install go?
Oh, it went perfectly. Just used the curl, got the binary installed, did the Tailscale up on the machine and asked me to visit a URL to authenticate against GitHub. added the machine, and it's ready to go.
Sweet.
So yeah, I mean, super easy. The one thing I did find in my looking around was this thing called Headscale.
Mm-hmm.
Have you looked at Headscale at all?
No.
I'm trying to figure out if it's a replacement for the Tailscale, like the login Tailscale thing to do your management, but it's self-hosted. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to read the description and find out if that's what it actually is, because it says it's a replacement for the Tailscale control server, self-hosted implementation.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I haven't even looked at this. Yeah,
I have a link to it in the show notes, so it'll be available for people to peruse. But I'm trying to figure out if, in reading this, that's what it actually is. If you want to manage your devices and do all the stuff with the Magic DNS and all that, not using the hosted version, if that's what Headscale actually is.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's definitely something to take a look at in some deeper detail. But
apparently, there's a link to a video that was done at last year's FOSDEM about Headscale. So that would probably be very informative. I just hadn't had a chance to look at it, and it was presented by the person who actually wrote it. So,
well, cool. Yeah, I'm learning more. I love these deep dives because I always learn something too.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I knew nothing about Tailscale except for the fact that you were razzing me about it. And you did earlier too, because I remember I was having this issue with my wanting to be able to connect machines via VPN because I was trying to get F mounts across the network without, and I went through the trouble of like setting up, Kerberos and a bunch of other crap, and none of that really worked. And this would have just done it. Yeah. But, resistance and bullheadedness, you know how it is. So, yeah.
So the nice part too about the IP addresses that they get. So you're basically on, again, your virtual private network. So you have your own IP addresses in the system. So when I use this in the context of ham radio for the Jamboree, I had already set up all the laptops here at the house to connect to each other with N1MM. And instead of letting it use the LAN addresses for everything, because I knew things would probably change if it's not on my Wi-Fi and it's on the Wi-Fi we have there, or if they happen to flip over and use the AT&T Wi-Fi that was there. I set everything up to use their Tailscale IP addresses so that when they joined the log group, they could already see each other because it didn't matter where they were. I could have left one here at the house and it would have still been connected with all the other computers for logging purposes. So it simplified a lot of stuff downstream because I was able to kind of pre-configure stuff, not knowing exactly how I was going to connect all these devices back together again, once again. And I was just thinking this would be perfect for like a field day where everybody's kind of like separated far enough away where, maybe not having a Wi-Fi hotspot for everybody would work out well. But let's say you can, technically hotspot your phone locally or whatever, and then you can connect up everybody back together again via virtual networking, and you don't have to really worry about how they get connected as long as they are connected and they're all on the same Tailscale network. So it does simplify things like that where you want them to be able to talk and they're going to have internet access, but you don't necessarily know the conditions of how that they're going to be connected when you get there. So a couple of things like that just kind of eliminates the need to overthink too much about the end result, because that once they're online, regardless of where they're at, even if they're on, let's say you go to some business or whatever on your phone and you connect up, to their Wi-Fi, and maybe they have sort of blocking stuff and everything else, this thing will traverse pretty much every corporate network VPN that I've seen. So, which is nice. Because you can see everything that you need to see when you're trying to get something done. And let's say you needed something off your server at home for a project you're working on. I can just get on my phone, blah, blah, pull that file up off the file server, bring it over and use it quite rapidly. So it does simplify a lot of those kind of interesting needs. And I constantly finding like little uses for it that simplify, issues that I've run into with supporting various systems in remote places and stuff like that. Like, I have Tailscale on my parents' laptop. So it's like, I don't have to worry about their IP address or whatever. I just, connect to it whenever I need to connect to it and, to support and stuff like that. So he can be wherever and I can still fix his machine. And, it's it's nice. It's very, very, very nice, especially when you're supporting a family of computers and stuff like that aren't necessarily all in the same location.
Yeah, this would be kind of nice too if you were, I've been in the situation where I've had people contact me about helping them with stuff like that. Not necessarily someone I'm familiar with, but someone I was willing to help in a, just sort of good Samaritan capacity. And if they could connect into the Tailscale so I could see their machine and help them remotely, that would be particularly useful. And of course, the connections, because of this sort of centralized network hub where everything is connected through, it becomes network configuration agnostic. So it doesn't really matter if you're, on the internet through a VPN, through a Wi-Fi router on a public Wi-Fi access net. It doesn't really matter. Everything still connects to everything with essentially no configuration. So yeah, very, very handy.
Yeah, and I know people get into really like detailed networks and stuff like that, which this allows you to do all kinds of stuff. And I could see this used for a multitude of things where we have, let's say, network blocks that you have assigned for whatever, let's say private network, or let's say even like say the amateur radio network. So let's say the 44 net stuff. Like in theory, you could build the 44 net behind its own Tailscale network, prevent any exit nodes from exiting, and keep it completely contained, and you wouldn't have to worry about routing or anything else like that. So you could actually eliminate the need to do certain things in your private network.
Obviously, I don't know the answer to this, but depending on how robust the split tunneling is, you could be really granular in what you allow access into the tailnet with. So you could presumably you could bring it down to like ports or apps or whatever that only allowed that kind of access through the tailnet, and everything else shunted back through the internet. So you couldn't, accidentally be hacked, through some backdoor while you're trying to be helpful in some other way.
Yeah, very true, very true. Yeah, and the ACL language is quite powerful. And as let's say Steve's asking a question, if the WireGuard implementation runs in user space while OpenVPN runs at the kernel level, would be curious to see if there's performance benchmarks and how it would scale at a corporate level. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm using it as a user, so I wouldn't be able to have those statistics, but they do have enterprise pricing. So I'm assuming that they do have this at scale in some places. So, yeah, because, enterprise, it's for companies who need advanced integrations. Yeah, I'm assuming it can probably handle it. just an assumption. Yeah, it would be probably a slight performance at being at the user space, but for my purposes, I've never had to worry too much about it. I mean, in fact, most people thought the machine that we were running there at the Hamvention was the machine at home because, the traces on all the graphical stuff looked pretty much live, and they were including running an SDR remote. The SDR looked like real time. So it's good. That's for sure.
Yeah, and that was through the Wi-Fi, not a dedicated drop. So
yeah, the crappy Wi-Fi at the Hamvention place. Back to my house.
Yeah, no, it looked really good. That was excellent. A nice way to display that, and of course, I'm sure we'll be doing that again this year. So yeah, for sure. So that'll work out. I should be able to do it for mine too.
Yeah, you'll have something prettier to show probably than mine's always kind of crummy.
Well, I don't know how to show mine because, I mean, in order to get an actual remote GUI into it, you're supposed to be buying that SU LAN 10 device from Yaesu to get the PAN adapter and all that stuff through and it's like stupidly expensive. So I'm going to have to try and figure out something else, but
well, you might not be able to have the pretty, right?
Yeah, I may not have the really cool display, but we'll definitely have something for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm just kind of waiting to see if anybody has any more questions about it in the live chat. We did have a couple other people join. Hope you tagged those people in there.
I did.
Sweet. Okay, cool. Yeah, I find it as one of the tools in my toolbox now that I don't know if I could live without now. I've gotten so used to using it, and I no longer even really concern myself with like the server. I don't even know what IP it has on the network here anymore because I don't really use the local network address to connect to it. So and I don't notice any performance issues because even though it's on a different IP address, what have you, the routing knows that it's in fact local to where I'm at. So it doesn't have to leave the network to get there because it's a point-to-point connection. So the peer knows that it's on the same, basically wired connection to each other so they can see each other without a problem. So I just use the IP addresses for them in the Tailscale, even though they're, my laptops here or my desktop is only like about 5 foot from the server.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's really cool though. And it does, I like the fact that you can create a outbound connection into your tailnet and then route it back out through an exit node, even if they're on the same network, just to change your exit position, depending on whether you need that for having access to like predefined. Like sometimes a website will identify you by like where you come from. So if you wanted to access that same resource from a different place, you could have it go through the tailnet and exit in the same place. Therefore, it would be, the thing that's trying to authenticate you wouldn't know any difference. So you could have multiple devices exiting and looking like the same device for authentication purposes, not necessarily for subterfuge purposes, but just to be to simplify processes, I guess is what I'm saying. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, you could always have all the devices traverse out the same exit point. So let's say if you had some other service downstream that was not Tailscale aware, but knew that your connections from this IP address were allowed, you could route all of your necessary traffic internally on your VPN network through that exit point, so that it would pass that ACL test on the external service.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially if you were doing something remote, like if you just happen to have to be able to access it via your phone or something, that'd be really handy. So
yeah. So like for those corporate laptop deals, I have my laptops for work are actually all plugged in at my office downtown. So when I'm not downtown, I'm just remoting in with Tailscale connected to the subnet, and I can connect to my laptops here, do some work here, go to the coffee shop, do some work on those laptops there, and then go downtown, and there I have my multiple screens downtown. It simplifies everything for me. So it's definitely solved many little things. So I don't have to, if I travel, I only have to bring one laptop with me because I can always connect to my other laptops. Even if I'm on a plane flying across the sky, I can just connect to my laptop back at my office and do whatever I need to do. Of course, if it's going to be a slow connection or what have you, it'll suffer a little bit. But you just deal with that particular delay aspect of things.
Right. And Steve, even though Bill is using No Machine, there's no reason you couldn't do something like VNC. You would just connect to it through the Tailnet IP address and it would work just the same. So
yeah, it's if you can get VNC working.
Well,
yeah, I've gone to No Machine on almost everything just because it's just so much simpler. And I think we had a discussion about that, of the things we hate about Linux, right? And I think one of the things was remote desktop.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the biggest problem I ever had with any of the remote access stuff was just trying to connect to my router, which doesn't deal well with any kind of remote access that steals the audio capability of the connecting machine, or the server machine, which is most of them. So, but apparently No Machine and Team Viewer are two that you can do that with and not have the audio rerouted.
Right. And I think Rust Desk also does that too. So there's that as well. I just never used Rust Desk personally.
Yeah, I haven't either. I know of it. I know we talked about it, but haven't used it.
But yeah, having no other questions. Is there anything else you can think of that we didn't talk about with it, or that you have questions?
No, I don't have any further questions. I know it's going to take a little bit of time to get the implementation up and running and explore some of the features like the magic DNS and changing the default domain and things like that, because those are things I would probably want to do, and checking out the capabilities of the split tunneling. But I think for the most part, I think we've got all of the highlights for sure.
Yeah, I think like a use case too that I hear a lot of people talking about is like if you getting into like the self-hosting kind of thing, which, obviously you do, Rust, you self-host a lot of stuff at home there, and you want to be able to, let's say, have, I think Nextcloud does it or whatever. You can actually sync your phone to Nextcloud. So like, kind of use it as your photo store and everything else device, document store and everything. And you wanted to have it synced to your phone. You could do that seamlessly over Tailscale, like the internal apps do on the phone, like Google Photos and Apple Photo app, whatever it's called. Apple Photos. Isn't it just called Photos? Yeah, so where they sync and stuff like that, you can actually set the same thing up using your own self-hosted stuff through the Tailscale connections, and you'd have basically your own self-hosted, including wherever you are with your phone type deal, being able to sync your phone pictures and any other important things that you want to sync back and forth. So yeah, doing device backup remotely is easy for those kind of devices. So another kind of use case item for it. I haven't gone that far yet, but I have been thinking about it.
Yeah, very good. I can think of a few others that I'm not going to talk about publicly, but
yeah.
Not because it's anything illicit or anything like that. It's just like I have my current ISP here is like very paranoid about any kind of traffic that looks even remotely suspicious, regardless of that. And if I could have the exit node be at my ISP where I work, where obviously I wouldn't care about such things, it would be pretty handy. So
yeah, I mean, you can even use this. You can spin up a droplet on DigitalOcean and drop Tailscale on your droplet and use your droplet as an exit point too. So I mean, there's just things like that you can do pretty simple, and you don't have to think about it. You know, if you didn't want to use a Mulvad or whatever VPN add-on service, you can get your little $5 droplet and Tailscale it, and use that as your exit node if you wanted to have traffic in other places, or do with the AWS. Same thing. There's just a multitude of ways you can use this.
Yeah, absolutely. Any kind of VPS in the cloud, could be instantiated as a node, a tailnet node, and an exit point. So, yep. All right. Well, I think that kind of covers it. So, unless we have any last minute questions, I see some typing, so I'll try and pause briefly. Oh, nope, he just said cool stuff. So,
yes, very cool stuff. Yeah,
yes, very cool stuff. All right. So that brings us down to the end of our topic for tonight, but we do have a couple of quick announcements. The first one is that I'm planning on getting the Hamvention crowdfunding campaign started on February 1st. And I'm presuming I'm still going to be able to use GoFundMe. I know once upon a time I had to use something else because the way GoFundMe work changed, and like I could never use what's the big one? What's the one that started it all? What the hell was the name of it? It was the big one.
Kickstarter?
Kickstarter, yeah. Thank you. We can never use Kickstarter as a crowdfunding source, so we had to use other stuff. That'll be starting soon. I think the cap will be $500 this time. That should definitely be all we need. And as I said before, if this one goes well and we're able to get through and get the booth set up and everything and whatnot for this one, then there will never be another one because our regular donations will be enough to cover everything going forward. And then just a quick shout out. And the only reason I'm doing this is because when I made the contact on Saturday during Winter Field Day, he asked me if I was the K5TUX of Linux in the Ham Shack, and I said yes, and he said, I love the podcast. So, working Winter Field Day, I worked a station Victor Echo 3 Romeo Golf Oscar. His name is Stuart, and he's somewhere up in, I think, somewhere around Ontario, Canada. And he was running Winter Field Day and POTA, so I got both of those contacts, and a shout out for Linux in the Ham Shack during the contact. So, wanted to make sure you got a mention here. Thanks, Stuart, for the contact and the park. And thanks to Howard, AC4FS, for hooking me onto POTA and, giving me one more thing I don't have time to do. So, yeah.
Hey, even I signed up for the POTA thingy, so.
Yeah, I've been trying to work POTA every day. So
I haven't, but
I'm doing it on phone too. I'm doing it on phone just so I can do something on phone instead of FT8.
Yeah. My first two contacts before I decided to sign up were on phone, but then it pulled in a bunch of ones I made previously, which is the previous one before the one I made on the 24th of this month was October 16th, 2022.
When I signed up, there were a bunch in there that I didn't realize I had as well. So, kind of nice to see them. But anyway. All right, so moving on to our new subscribers, supporters, and live participants. For subscribers, we have Joel KC0YEW, who was already a supporter, but he switched from PayPal over to Patreon. So thanks for doing that. Appreciate it. Got you hooked up on the Discord as a Patreon. So thanks. On Facebook, we had Richard Ainsworth, Jaime Anjos, and Jeffrey Eide. And there were only 3. It didn't say there were like 7 others this time. So I think I got everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. On Twitter, we got followed by at MG Dell, who is Mike Dell, K8LMJ. And the only reason I stopped to mention this at all is because Mike Dell is the reason why I do podcasting. Way back in the day, way before Linux in the Ham Shack, way before Richard, in I think late 2006, I was looking to do some podcasting, and Mike Dell had a podcast back then called Strange Today, which was just a reading of some strange facts from every given day in history. And that is where I started podcasting, on Strange Today for Mike Dell back in 2006-ish, or I think it was late 2006. So that's very cool that he signed up. He's been podcasting for a long time, and he did something called, I think, a Ham Radio College, something like that, where he helped people study for the exams. A podcast covering like the question pools and stuff like that. So I don't know if he's still doing that, but that's who he is. So shout out to Mike. Thanks for following us over there on Twitter, and maybe we'll hear from you again sometime. And then we also had Sicolia80647 on Twitter. YouTube, we have Kurt Lewis. On Discord, we had 9M2PJU, HD, and Zub. On Instagram, we had 7X2JV _ Nori. Somebody can look up where 7X is from, because I'm kind of curious where 7X is. On Mastodon, we had at Linux. We're being followed by Linux. I don't think it's Linux, but
I said, uh-oh. We're being stalked by Linux.
By Linux, yes. And also W5DWA. No merch sales, no mailing list. And on the live chat in the chat tonight, we had Jill, K1TTZ, Tony, K4XSS, Steve, KJ5T, Ted, WA0EIR, Mike, K6GTE, and briefly, SEMA Executor was in there. So,
and 7X-Ray 2 is in Algeria.
Algeria. Excellent. Yeah, I think we're getting some worldwide traction. Love it. Because 9M2, I think, is Malaysia or something like that. So
yeah, I think so. 9 Mike 2, something. Yeah, Kuala Lumpur, West Malaysia.
Okay, Kuala Lumpur. Excellent. All right, so thanks everybody for tuning into this episode. We hope you enjoyed our little shallowish deep dive on Tailscale. It's something that I definitely plan on using going forward, and we hope you find some utility in it as well. And if not, at least enjoyed the information. We appreciate it. Please look out for the crowdfunding campaign, and we really hope to see you all at Hamvention coming up in May again this year. We're definitely looking forward to it. In the meantime, have a great week, and we hope you'll tune in for the next one. But in the meantime, we'll let you get on with your lives. This has been episode number 531 of Linux in the Ham Shack. And for the on assignment, Cheryl, W5MOO, I'm Russ, K5TUX.
And I'm Bill, NE4RD73.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Linux in the Ham Shack. LHS is a community-sponsored podcast. Our website is located at lhspodcast.info. You can support the podcast by visiting the LHS Patreon page at patreon.com/LHS podcast, or by using the contribute list on the homepage. We have a presence on Discord, Facebook, IRC, Twitter, and YouTube. You can also drop us an email at info@lhspodcast.info, or leave us a voicemail at 1-909-LHS-SHOW. That's 1-909-547-7469. Visit the online LHS merchandise store at shop.lhspodcast.info for fun and fashionable show-themed merchandise. Until next time, remember to always heed your hedonism.